Hello everyone, today let's solve the problem number 1729. So what the question states here, 1729, find followers count, right? So what the question states here, we are given a table named followers with the following schema. You can clearly see we have user ID and follower ID as columns, right? So user ID and follower ID both are of the type this one, integer, right? This one we have to keep in mind. So here user ID and the follower ID both, this one user ID and follower ID is the primary key here in this case. So the table contains the IDs of a user and their follower in the social media app here in this case, right? So here you can clearly see user ID and follower ID. The table contains the IDs of a user, IDs of the user 0, 1, 2, 2, right? So here we have 0, 1, 2, right? The table contains IDs of a user and their follower in the social media app. Followers, these are the followers with the particular follower ID. Here in this case, the user has a follower ID of 1, user has a follower ID of 0, 0 and 1. So 1 and 0 are the follower ID of a particular follower, right? Here in this case 0 and 1, right? So what is our main task then? We have to write the SQL query to return for each user. So to return for each user the number of followers. So here in this case, for 0 how many number of followers he has, and for 1 how many number of followers he has, and for 2 how many number of followers he has, that we need to return, right, in the form of output. That's what they have given. So return the result ordered by user ID in the ascending order. So they have clearly mentioned we have to return the result ordered by the user ID in ascending order. So we need to go with 0, 1 and then 2 strictly in the ascending order, right? So in this case, we have the output table as well. They have clearly mentioned here. Let's consider 0, 1 and 2. For this one, for these user ID, we have to go with how many number of followers we have, right? So this is nothing but the follower ID. These are not the number of followers. This is very important. Don't get confused here. This is just the follower ID. Here 0 is having one follower with the follower ID 1 in this case. So we will return 1 in this case. So 1 is having the follower, 1 is having the follower, one follower with the follower ID 0. Here for 1 also we will return 1 in this case, right? So for 2 we have 2 followers here with the follower ID 0 and with the follower ID 1, with the follower ID 0 and follower ID 1. So this follower, the follower with the follower ID 0 and the follower with the follower ID 1, both are this one following user ID 2 here in this case. So we need to return 2 in this case, right? So this is here, this guy is following, the follower ID with 1 is following 0. The follower ID with 0 is following 1. The follower ID with 0, 1 is following 2 here in this case. So that's what they have given in the question. So we need to return this one, 0, 1, this one, 1, 1 and 2, 2, this one here, user ID and the follower count we need to return, right? So this is what the question states. They have clearly mentioned in the example as well, right? They have beautifully shown the example in this case. So explanation, they have shown the same thing. They have explained the same thing, sorry. The followers of 0 are 1, whatever I have explained. This should be clear by now. So the followers of 1 are 0. The followers of 2 are 0, 1. So in this case 1, 1 and 2. I hope the question is completely clear, right? So first what we will do, we will discuss the approach, then we will write the query. So let's discuss the approach step by step first. So here in this case, first step is we will be making use of count function here. This one I'm speaking of. So just give me a second here. We will be making use of the count function here in this case. Why we will be making use of the count function? Because we have to count the number of followers for each user ID. So in the example, for 0 we had 1, for 1 also we had 1, for 2 we had, if you remember, just give me a second. Yeah, for 2 we had 2, right? 2 followers. So we need to count the number of followers here. This one I'm speaking of, number of followers for each ID, right? For each ID. That is the reason we'll be making use of the count function here to count the number of followers for each user ID. Just keep this in mind. This is important, right? So we will group the result by user ID. Why we have to group the result by user ID? Because we have to get the count for each user, right? So we have to get the count for each user. For that purpose, we'll be making use of we are going with group by, or we will group the result by user ID. I hope this is clear, right? Simple to understand. So the third part here is we will be making use of order by clause here. Why we'll be making use of the order by clause here? Because order by clause, order by user ID ascending. So they have strictly mentioned in the question that we have to go with the ascending order based on the user ID. So first 0, then came 1, then came 2 in the output table, if you remember, right? First came 0, first, then second came 1, the third came 2. So they have strictly asked in the question that we have to order this one based on the this one user ID, based on the user ID in the ascending order, right? So that's what we are, that is the reason we'll be making use of order by is fine, user ID ascending order. That is the reason we'll be making use of order by class. So based on the user ID in the ascending order is right. So I hope this is clear, right? Simple to understand. Basically to return the result in the ascending order of user ID. That's what I said, right? So I've clearly shown this one here. So I hope the approach is completely clear. These are the 3 steps we need to follow, right? Now let's start writing the code. So here let's start writing the query. As we had discussed on the approach, we have to count the number of followers for each user, right? First step here is we will select the user ID from the table. We have to select the user ID table, then count the number of followers for each user. So I can articulate that one, our thought process, basically our thought process in this way, in the form of query in this way, right? I'll just go with select here user underscore ID, comma. So we have to count, right? So this one we have already discussed in the approach. So we have to count based on the follower ID. As this one, I'll just give here followers count. So this one, just give me a second. I'll just copy this one, and I just don't want to type this one. This is fine. Followers count. So first we are selecting the user ID here. You can clearly see we are selecting the user ID from the table. From this is coming from the followers table, right? Next, let's write that one itself. But now let's understand this one here. We are selecting the user ID from the table. Then we are counting the number of followers for each user, right? So that's what we are doing. This is basically coming from followers table. So let me copy this one, followers. So this one, let me copy this one, followers, and this is coming from the followers table. This is fine, and we are grouping by user ID to get the count for each user, right? So we are grouping by the user ID to get the count for each user. So I'll just go with here group by user ID. This is fine. Finally, we will order by, means we will order the result by user ID in the ascending order. This was the last step in the approach that we considered, right? So I'll just articulate the same thing in the form of query here. This one order by user underscore ID ascending order. So I'll just give here yes. This is fine. This is it for the query. Let me hit the run button. I hope this works. Let's see. So here you can clearly see the sample test case is getting passed. Means the query works absolutely correct on this case, right? So let me hit the submit button quickly. So let's see whether it works for all the test cases or not. So yeah, you can clearly see all the test cases are getting passed here, right? So it is not showing anything right here. Just give me a second. Let me hit the submit button again. Yeah, this is fine. So all the test cases are getting passed here. Means the query works absolutely correct in this case, right? So I hope whatever the query that we have written is completely clear. For now, this is it. Thanks for watching, guys.